Discipline is the greatest wealth because it alone cannot be stolen, inflated, or corrupted. And this is the secret the Stoics guarded as their most enduring treasure: the conviction that mastery of the self is richer than mastery of kingdoms and more enduring than the grandest empire. Imagine for a moment standing in the marble halls of Rome, where senators draped in flowing robes argue with passion over laws, where merchants call out prices for silks and spices from distant lands, and where soldiers return with carts full of treasures, looted from conquered cities. To the eye, it looks like the world is overflowing with wealth and power, and yet, in the dim glow of a solitary lamp, Marcus Aurelius bends over a small wax tablet, reminding himself not of victory or riches, but of discipline, the quiet art of ruling his own soul. This paradox is unforgettable. The Emperor of Rome, master of legions and of unimaginable wealth, writes words of restraint and humility to himself because he knows that without discipline, he is as poor as the beggar in the streets. But with discipline, he holds a fortune no disaster can erase. This truth is not locked in the past, but breathes with the same urgency today. In our own modern marketplaces, glowing screens bombard us with advertisements, algorithms whisper promises of luxury, and every corner of our lives hums with the temptation to consume more, to spend more, to chase more. The world tells us that happiness lies in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next indulgence. But the Stoic voice cuts through with clarity, the same clarity that echoed in Rome. Wealth without discipline enslaves, but discipline itself is freedom. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men of his age, warned repeatedly that luxury corrupts more deeply than poverty. Poverty teaches necessity, stripping life down to what is essential, but luxury whispers dependency. It convinces the soul that it cannot live without comfort, that indulgence is owed, and that pleasure is indispensable. In those whispers lies a hidden slavery, one more dangerous than hunger itself, because it binds the spirit with invisible chains. Dependence on riches makes a man fragile, trembling at every fluctuation, while discipline makes him unshakable, steady in feast or famine, resilient no matter how fortune turns her hand. Epictetus, born into slavery, crippled in body and denied possessions, declared himself free because no master could chain his mind. He owned nothing, yet he carried a treasure beyond measure, a wealth no emperor could surpass: his own judgment, his own will, his own disciplined choices. He taught that true freedom rests not in what you own, but in what you can endure, not in what fortune gives, but in what you refuse to surrender. His life stands as proof that discipline transforms scarcity into sufficiency, suffering into strength, and chains into freedom. Marcus Aurelius echoed the same principle in his meditations, reminding himself every day that life is fleeting, possessions are temporary, and that the true fortune of a man lies in his ability to govern himself. He saw clearly that estates could burn, titles could be stripped, power could collapse, but the disciplined mind could walk calmly through every storm. To understand why discipline is the greatest wealth, picture two men. One lives in a palace surrounded by treasures, yet he lies awake at night, tormented by fear of loss, consumed by envy of those richer still, and restless, because his desires multiply faster than his possessions. The other lives modestly, owns little, but wakes each morning with gratitude, eats simply without craving more, gives freely without fear, and sleeps soundly without worry. Who is wealthier? The Stoics answer without hesitation: the man of discipline, because his fortune is unshakable, and rests not on what can be taken away, but on what cannot be touched. This principle is not mere philosophy, but a practical force in everyday life. Discipline governs how we spend, how we eat, how we work, how we speak, and how we act. Each act of restraint is like a coin minted in the treasury of the soul. Imagine choosing not to indulge in an unnecessary expense, resisting anger in the heat of conflict, or rising early to fulfill your duty rather than yielding to laziness. Each of these small victories adds to a wealth that no thief can steal, no empire can tax, and no calamity can erase. Over time, the man who practices discipline accumulates an invisible fortune, a strength that carries him through storms that would shatter others. Now consider our modern age. Markets rise and fall in unpredictable rhythms. Banks measure us by scores, and the economy shifts with the click of unseen hands. Advertisements shout that happiness is one purchase away, that your worth depends on your possessions, that without luxury, your life is incomplete. And yet, if your peace depends on numbers on a screen or luxuries that can vanish overnight, you are not free. You are in chains. But if your happiness rests on the discipline of your own mind, you walk unbroken through poverty and prosperity alike. To carry wealth lightly, as a traveler carries a cloak, grateful when it warms, but ready to part with it when the journey demands, is the essence of Stoic discipline. Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by legions and treasures. Yet he reminded himself each night that none of it defined him. He wrote words only for himself, as though whispering to his soul. Fortune can take everything, but it cannot touch the discipline you build within. This is why the Stoics declared that the richest man is not he who owns the most, but he who needs the least. The man who has disciplined his desires cannot be enslaved by loss, cannot be broken by scarcity, cannot be corrupted by indulgence. Think of your own life. How often do you chase after more, convinced that joy is waiting in the next possession, the next title, the next triumph, only to feel restless once again? And how often have you felt the quiet strength of restraint, the pride of patience, the calm of living within your limits? That pride is the truest coin, the wealth that endures when gold melts and monuments crumble. Each time you choose discipline, you are building a fortune in character, in freedom, in clarity. The Stoic secret is simple but profound. Discipline is the greatest wealth because it is the one treasure that cannot be lost. Fortune may strip away possessions, disasters may erase legacies, empires may collapse into dust, but the man who governs himself carries his fortune wherever he goes. Imagine the markets of Rome falling silent, the palaces of emperors reduced to ruins, the coins of gold melted back into the earth, and what remains is the soul of the man who rules himself. That is true wealth, eternal and unbroken, a coin that does not rust with time and cannot be stolen by fate. So as you hear these words, pause and ask yourself, do you want to be rich in possessions that fade or in freedom that endures? The choice is not distant. It is made in every moment of your life, in every decision where desire pulls one way and discipline calls another. To live without discipline is to be owned by fortune. To live with discipline is to own yourself. That is the Stoic secret, and it is as true now as it was 2,000 years ago. Discipline is the greatest wealth because it is the essence of freedom, and the man who holds it is rich beyond measure.